In last week's video, I talked about the history of the ancient vampire hunting organisation, the Dawn Guard. So now, it only seems appropriate that I make a video about the vampires. I'll start off by explaining what a vampire is in Elder Scrolls. A vampire is any individual infected with vampirism, a disease which does many things. It distorts the face and makes the eyes glow, and does come with some positive traits such as immortality and enhanced magical ability, and the further the infection develops, the better their magical ability becomes. But it also comes with a lot of negatives, such as being extremely sensitive to sunlight, an unquenchable thirst for blood, and of course this unquenchable thirst for blood makes them a danger to society, and therefore they are almost always outcasted, if not hunted down, by a society. And another thing, which is either a negative or a positive, depending on whose perspective you're looking from, is that vampires can spread vampirism to mortals. When someone does become infected by a vampire, they are not instantly infected with vampirism. Instead, they are infected with sanguinaire vampiris. When you merely have sanguinaire vampiris, you are not a vampire yet, because this disease is merely a development stage to vampirism, and this disease can be cured easily the same way any other usual disease can be, either by drinking a cure disease potion, asking the aid of a vigilant of Stendar, or praying at an altar. However, this stage only lasts 3 days. After that, you are now infected with vampirism, making you an official vampire, and the cure for this disease is a bit more complicated. You must go to the mage Phalion, who resides in Morthal, and he will be able to cure you if you fill a black soul gem with the soul of a mortal. So this is how one becomes a lesser vampire. However, there are elite vampires who gain their power in a pretty different way, but more on that later. I'll now talk about the origins of the vampires, but I must give a serious warning here, because for a lot of people, this part may seem very confronting. The first ever vampire was Lemay Belafag, who later became Lemay Bal, as she unwillingly became Molag Bal's bride. Before then, however, Lemay Belafag was a worshipper of Arkay, and one of the last surviving needs in the First Era. As an insult to Arkay, the divine of life and death, Molag Bal used her to create something that went entirely against the concept of life and death. He did so by assaulting Lemay, shedding a droplet of his own blood onto her forehead, and then leaving her for dead. She was later found by a nomadic tribe who tried to care for her, but despite their efforts, she died within the fortnight, and so the nomads were going to cremate Lemay. But just before they were about to, Lemay rose from the dead as the first vampire. And as we know, vampires literally live off of violence. Because of this, Lemay proceeded to slaughter the entire tribe. She then unwillingly became Lemay Bal, Molag Bal's wife. Now I'll go over the more elite forms of vampires. I'll start off with purebloods. Rather than being affected by other vampires, purebloods gain pure vampirism, which is given via a ritual, and this pure vampirism gives pureblood vampires much greater power over lesser vampires. One example of a pureblood vampire is Lord Harkon himself, the lord of the Volkir clan. The thing about this form of vampirism is that it only works for males. Females, however, have something very similar, and like the pureblood ritual, their form of pure vampirism gives them much greater power over lesser vampires. These female purebloods are known as Daughters of Cold Harbour, and in case you don't know, Cold Harbour is Molag Bal's Plane of Oblivion. Females get their pureblood vampirism directly from Molag Bal. There are many bad things about this ritual, however. The first thing is that Serena, Lord Harkon's daughter, describes the ritual as degrading, but refuses to go into any more detail than that. From this we can assume that it involves something as heinous as something that LeMay herself went through. The second thing is that throughout vampire tradition, many of these women did not partake in this ritual voluntarily. And yet another bad thing is that most do not actually survive this ritual, but those who do emerge as female purebloods. And despite that these women did not willingly partake in this ritual, it was considered a high honour from Molag Bal himself, one that should not be taken lightly. To end off today's video, I now want to talk about the Volkare clan, which you could technically consider the royal court of the vampires in Skyrim. I'll explain why. The Volkare clan was founded by Lord Harkon, who continues to rule during the events of the game Skyrim. Sometime in history, Harkon was a mortal king, but he was a power-hungry one who always feared death. Because of this, he pledged himself to Molag Bal, and the two made a pact. Harkon sacrificed many innocents, presumably his own people, and in return Molag Bal made Harkon and his family pureblood vampires. Sometime later in history, Harkon's kingdom disbanded. However, Harkon and his family founded the Volkare clan, which would become the most prominent tribe of vampires in Skyrim. So that is a video on the vampires. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one.